Hey guys, so excuse the air conditioner. I'm in the living room. It's summer. Air conditioner's gonna be going. But we're gonna start off this Wheel of D20 vlog for June. I have one book I have to read this month, and that's it. And I've already got a good chunk of the way started with it. It is currently 3:10 in the afternoon. I was about to say morning. No. 3:10 in the afternoon on Sunday, June 26th. So I still have a couple of days before I have to have this done, but the book that I'm working on for this month is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. This was to fulfill the prompt from the Wheel of D20 for a book that was highest rated on my Goodreads want to read list. They're basically books that I hadn't read as of yet, and it had to be one of the highest rated ones, and if I had it physically or even on ebook, it would also be something I would pick up. And there was quite a few on my want to read list that I didn't already own physically or on ebook, so this was the first one that did. And it's one of the higher rated ones. I think it had like at least a 4.3 star rating on Goodreads, but currently I'm on page 75 of this, so good few chapters in. Basically at this point, Percy is already now in Camp Half-Blood, and he's just really met with Chiron and Mr. D, and, you know, kind of figured out who Annabeth is, and the fact that she helped nurse him back to health after being attacked by the Minotaur. Now, I really liked this. Now, and the funny thing is I never read this as a kid. I know everyone, including my husband, has read this series when they were kids, when they were like in middle school, all that stuff, because it was really popular, along with like Harry Potter and stuff like that. But I never got the chance to read this myself, and I feel like I missed out a lot because I watched the movie that came out of this with Logan Lerman as Percy, and I remember liking it enough to being like, I would like to read the books, but I do know that those movies are not the best adaptations of these books. But so far, it seems that from the small recollection of memory I have of watching the movie, because it's been a hot minute, it so far is following the book pretty closely. At this moment in time, like I said, Percy's just got to Camp Half-Blood. I'm on chapter 6 right now, and everything, I think, for the most part, has been brought up. I think that there is one thing that I don't remember, and that was when Percy's mom took him to the beach. I don't remember that being a part of the movie, but it's possible I'm just either forgetting or it wasn't there at all. But so far, I really like it. I have read Rick Riordan in the past. I did read the Kane Chronicles when I was in like middle school, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I've loved everything so far that I've read from his imprint, which is more or less very inspired in terms of writing, and obviously the kinds of stories come up where, you know, you have kids who are descendants of gods, and so like they have their own journeys going on, and so a lot of them kind of follow the same formula. In a sense that the Rick Riordan books do. But I really like it so far, and I think I should at least get through the majority of it today if I don't completely finish it. And I think tomorrow at the latest I could finish this. It's only 375 pages, and I'm already on page 75, so I have like 300 pages to go. But today I am recovering from having a party night with some friends, because today was my friend Megan's birthday, but we celebrated stuff yesterday because today's Sunday and we all had to work tomorrow, so we decided to have celebrations yesterday. So I'm recovering a little bit from that. I'm not really like hungover or anything. I've just had like an off and on headache over the course of the day yesterday. That's kind of shifted into today, so I've kind of got something brewing right here, so I might have to go take some ibuprofen in a little while. But I also did take a nap for like an hour and a half, so that was nice. And there's a sleepy Oscar right on the other couch. A sleepy Oscar. Booba. Yeah, a sleepy boy. All curled up. So yeah, that's the plan. So goal is to get through probably at least, I would say 60% of the way through this, and then finishing it up tomorrow. If I update my Goodreads progress real quick, and it's just now the sun's gone away because it's supposed to be very cloudy, and we might even get some rain today. So if I put in that I'm on page 75, it says I am 19% of the way through. So just today I've managed to get through that much. So I think that today is going to be pretty easy for me to get through 60%. I may even try to get through 75% of this if I could today. So just depends on how much I can get read over the course of the day while I'm sitting here on the couch and just kind of chilling out. So I'm going to be doing some reading sprints over the course of the day, working on this. I did do a sprint earlier. It was like 25 minutes of reading, and I got through basically like, I don't know, how much did I read? Started off from chapter 3. So I, in 25 minutes, read almost 50 pages of this book, because I was on page 29 starting off. So I think that that's pretty good, because especially with middle grade, it's a lot easier for me to fly through pages with these because it's so easy to read, because it's typically for a younger audience, so the pacing of it is a lot quicker. Because, you know, for middle school kids, 300 to 400 page books are pretty much like what they can focus on, and then you get into like young adult, and that's where it starts to get a little bit bigger sometimes, but they generally stay within the 300 to 400 range, and then you get into adult, which can be anything from 300 to like 2,000 pages basically for some authors, especially if you're reading fantasy or science fiction. So I'm enjoying this a lot though, and I do have the whole series, so if I like this enough to where I want to immediately pick up the second one, I will probably try to read that sometime in July. But I'm already within this next few days going to have to be picking up a lot of stuff that I was supposed to read in June, and a lot of it's going to carry over into July because I struggled for a little while this month. There was a lot of stuff going on where this is partially why this vlog is not started until the end of the month, because a lot of stuff's happened over the last couple of weeks that you guys may have already seen from my Battle of the Bookish and Desertathon vlogs and stuff like that. And honestly, I haven't even really read anything that counts for Desertathon at this point. I haven't. Like, I've been able to put stuff in for Battle of the Bookish, but I haven't completed anything for Desertathon by this point, and it's kind of upsetting for me personally, but at the same time, I just joined it on a whim and not sure if I was going to find anything to fit it. But I think at the very least, the Lightning Thief was going to count for a couple of things. Maybe. I don't remember, but we'll figure that out as we go. So anyway, let's go ahead and roll for this next sprint. So I've got my little D12 app, well, dice app, and this, I just pulled up my D12 on there. Let's go ahead and roll. Oh boy, 11. So we're going to have a nice 55-minute sprint here, which I will probably get through a large chunk of this in that time, because if I got through almost 50 pages in 25 minutes, it's going to be probably about 100 and some pages of reading in this time, which I will not be mad at. Like, I'll be over halfway through it at that point. So it's a good start at least. I'm going to use my Flora app like I always do with these reading sprints, and currently with that kind of a time, I can go ahead and unlock my first plant from Russia, which I will find out when the timer goes out. So we are going to set this for 55 minutes and go. Okay, it's a little bit later. I finished my sprint and also took a break. It's now 4:41, and I'm 39% of the way through now, on page 149, chapter 10. And so far, still really liking this. The one thing I will say I feel like is super annoying is the fact that everyone keeps like acting as if Percy will never understand. Like, yes, he's 11, 12 years old, whatever, but the kid's been through some stuff. Like, he can handle information that comes his way. Like, everybody either doesn't want to tell him because they don't, like, think he's capable of understanding what's going on, or it's like he has to figure it out on his own, and it's not helpful. It's, if anything, really aggravating. Like, nobody wants to tell him anything of what's really going on. Like, even just the theories of what might be happening. Like, nobody wants to explain to him what's going on. But he has just been given his quest to go to Hades in the underworld, and start the quest of finding the lightning bolt that supposedly he stole, which also, again, doesn't make any sense. And they talk about at length about how they don't understand why this is happening, but it's kind of like one of those things where they're like, Percy's like, I've never stolen this thing in my life. I didn't even know what any of this was until, just recently. And they're like, yeah, we get that, but they still think that you could have done it, so it's entirely possible, even though you're saying you can't have done it, and all these things, and like, we believe you, but we also don't believe you, kind of thing. And it's so stupid. Like, I hate that so very much. Like, it's not something where it's like he can fully clear his name, because even if he returns the bolt, they're still gonna think that he's the one that took it in the first place, which is not the case. And it's just really aggravating because, like, there's no sense in any of that. That doesn't make any sense to me, but, like, that's the logic that these people have in this world. But we're gonna get started here in just a minute with another sprint, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my dice again, and let's take another roll. A full hour this time. Okay. Well, I mean, I got through 75 pages of this in that 55-minute sprint, so we're probably gonna get another 5 to 10 pages out of that. So I'll be pretty much halfway through, I think, by the time I get to the end of the sprint, because I read about 20% of this all in one sitting. So probably get to about the halfway mark in an hour, and then from there we'll probably figure out what we're gonna do about dinner. We had a bit of a late lunch though today, so I'm not really super hungry, but we'll see. And then I think the evening will be dedicated to getting through the second half of this, which I think is possible for me to get through, but at the very least, like I said, I'd like to get to 75% of this tonight, and then maybe finish this up tomorrow during the day when I'm working. Okay guys, so if you can hear anything in the background, there's Futurama playing on the TV. I apologize, but I didn't want to pause it. So anyway, it is now just after 9 o'clock in the evening, and I have something in my eye apparently that's bugging me, but I did finish Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. I spent all day working on this, and I finished it, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I do feel like, though, it was a little unnecessary in terms of the story for all of the adults and all of the people who seem to know more about what was going on with Percy to really hide stuff from him. This is a really common theme, I feel like, especially with these older young adult stories, especially ones that come around, within the few years of, like, Harry Potter, for instance. Harry doesn't ever really find out any of the information he's supposed to until much later in the series, whereas in here, you start to learn some things by the end of this book that do set us up for what's going to be happening in the later books. But it's basically pulling teeth, and it's basically this idea that even though these kids have gone through so much more already than a 12-year-old should have to go through, they're apparently not mature enough to understand anything of what's actually going on. I will say, though, that from what I can remember of the adaptation that was done with Logan Lerman playing as Percy, the movie did a pretty well in terms of getting some of the best parts, I think, of this story. There definitely was a lot of stuff that was not included. I don't remember there being the entire Hephaestus trap in the movie, but most of what happened in this book was portrayed in the movie. There were some changes. The ultimate final battle scene with Luke by the end of this was different to my recollection, and ultimately the entire way that things happen at the very end of this, I think, in terms of what is next for Percy, does not really get explored. We don't really see a lot of the things that happen at the very end of this book, to my recollection. I could be completely wrong. It has been many, many years since I have watched the movie, but from what I can remember, the movie, for the most part, hit a lot of the most important scenes in this one, and I do believe it was Sea of Monsters that was the big disappointment for a lot of people when it came to these movies. But I am very excited to be able to watch the TV show when it does finally come out on Disney Plus, because I think that so far with how things have been casted for that TV show, it's going to turn out great. I mean, because for one, we actually have characters that are being casted by people who are those ages, so that's very exciting to see, and I'm very excited too to see how exactly Rick Riordan, since he is writing the script for the show, you know, what exactly we're going to see. Are there going to be things that we're going to get more so word for word from what's in the book in the show? That's going to be amazing. And I feel like as an adult reading this for the first time ever, this was a really good experience, because I had known the story for the most part. I knew what exactly was going to be going on. I knew it was going to be playing into a lot of the myth that was played into previously with, you know, other versions of, you know, the Perseus myth kind of coming around and being retold in different ways. As far as the myth aspect, I really like how this very much stands on its own, very similar to how the books that are involved in the imprint that Rick Riordan has, and what I remember of the Kane Chronicles having been, was that they definitely had the massive influence of the mythology, but they were stories on their own. Like, you do see a lot of the gods come into this. You see a lot of the big ones like Ares, Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Dionysus, Chiron, Charon. Like, there is so much involved with them, but they are very much kind of not 100% present, all of them, because of the fact that this is focusing on Percy and Annabeth and Grover. And I really appreciate that, because it's focused on these kids and there's a very specific journey they have to go on. It doesn't feel like it is a full retelling. It's, if anything, it is taking the mythologies and kind of putting it in a modern sense and saying, hey, what would happen if this kid, who is the descendant of this god, was basically put up for you know, stealing something that he never had anything to do with. Like, I just really appreciate how this stands by itself, but does have massive, massive involvement of the Greek gods, and does, I think, in a lot of ways stand true to what mythology has kind of portrayed the gods to be. I will say one thing I don't 100% appreciate is something that was mentioned about Hades. And I actually, funny enough, had seen this earlier this week in an Instagram post that somebody had posted about this, but I didn't know that they were talking about this book in particular, but they had shown a passage on Instagram about the way that Hades was described, where basically Percy described him as having the same intense eyes and demeanor of people like Adolf Hitler, which I was a little uncomfortable with, because of the fact that, knowing the mythology of Hades, he's not inherently evil. Hades is very much a darker character in terms of the mythology, but he has his good points, and especially when it gets getting involved with the love story of him and Persephone, which, mind you, that whole thing is by itself also incredibly problematic in a lot of ways, but the way that he falls in love with Persephone and she does form him into being a softer person was something that I feel like was not really touched on here. I feel that Hades is always portrayed as purely inherently evil, and he's not. He makes some very questionable decisions, but he's not an inherently evil person. I mean, he suffers a lot. He's basically considered like the lesser brother of the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. and they always look down on him, and Zeus sends him down to take care of the underworld, which is incredibly hard to do. You know, he's having to deal with all the souls that come through every single day, every single century, and that can really weigh on a person. And so it doesn't surprise me that Hades becomes very jaded, but because of how jaded he becomes, he then is seen as this very inherently evil thing, and that's not really the case. But he does have very questionable motives and things that happen, like with the story of him and Persephone, because that's a whole other can of worms we could go into at a different point in time if we want to really dissect some of the mythologies that there are involved in the entirety of the culture. But the fact of the matter being that he's described similar to some of the most very evil people that there were in human history, I was a little uncomfortable with that, just purely based on the fact that I don't think fully exemplifies what Hades is and what he represents and what he basically was in the original mythologies. So that was the only other issue I seem to have had in this, was that description. But it was just really funny too how I saw somebody posting about that earlier this week with no context of what it was from, and I find out that it is this book exactly that they were reading, that post was about. So I just found that very interesting. But anyway, that is my only read I needed for Wheel of D20 for June. So that means in July, I get a free month away from the Wheel of D20. So we will be picking that back up in August with going back to 5 spins and seeing where I can get by the end of the year. If I can end up having another free month, or if I will take a little bit longer time getting through those. But for right now, July is a completely free month from the Wheel of D20, so that means I can spend more time working on other books that I was needing to. So a lot of the books I was going to be reading in June are going to be carrying over into July, so I'm going to have a lot more time to focus on that, since I won't have to worry about getting through anything that is more required based, which is very exciting. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this. If you guys would like to see me do maybe a reading series of going through the rest of the Percy Jackson books, I would be willing to do it. But I feel like, again, it would be kind of something that'd be on my lower priority list because of the fact that I don't want to overwhelm myself too often with too many reading series at once, since I have a ton of things usually going on with my TBRs. But I will be willing to put this on that lower priority list if that is something that would be interesting to you guys. But thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!